I built a 7-figure coaching business during medical school, so I had no choice but to get really good at one thing, which was focus, learning to prioritize, delegating fast, and building systems that run without me needing to be in the day-to-day every single day. So I'm going to show you exactly what would absolutely destroy your business, how you would also get stuck in the low leverage BS, and how you can make more money than you know what to do with, to the point where it feels illegal to make that much without feeling like you're actually working. So if you're an online coach and you're stuck, I'm going to break down every single thing you need to know, including what my team structure looks like, all the way from 0 to 10K a month and 100K plus per month. First things first, what is the worst thing that you can actually do? Number one, net zero decisions in a single hour. So that's going to be stuff that are irreversible. It's things that would collapse the future growth of any business and you would regret. Now, number two, minus $10,000 an hour tasks. One, justifying stupid purchases, shiny objects and side quests, gambling, drugs. So this doesn't just cost you the purchase itself. Yes, it may be a matter of buying a Lamborghini and that costs you $200,000. But buying a supercar, buying something like a PS5, buying designer stuff isn't necessarily a matter of making that single purchase in a single hour. It's how much it costs the possible growth of your business. Putting $10,000 into ads, putting $200,000 into ads, regardless of if it was unprofitable, it's a very, very good learning process for you to be able to say that this was a positive decision. Now, shiny objects and side quests, we see this every single day, even in our clients and stuff. When they come to us at the beginning, they inevitably have a new idea, which not only costs them a negative return on their time, energy, and efforts in the business, but it's also the cost of what they could have done with that time if they put it into something that would have made them more money. And that could be a $10,000 an hour task, choosing to double, triple down on YouTube when they had a qualified acquisition channel which was valid. If they just hired in 3 DM setters instead of trying to build an entire content team, maybe they would have grown. Maybe they would have grown faster than $10,000 an hour. And of course, gambling, yes, you can lose $10,000 in an hour gambling, but once again, getting overstimulated by things that just fry your dopamine circuit, which also goes to the $1,000 an hour task or negative $1,000 an hour tasks, things that absolutely kill your productivity and your focus as well. So I know that these things are always going to be there in life. It's just how can you intentionally remove that, and how can you intentionally at least work towards reducing that? So things like phone apps. Yes, of course, it's going to be social media that you need maybe for your business, but when you can make a decision where you're like, I will download an app like Opal, which is going to just block that for a certain amount of hours per day, so I know that it can't be a distraction in the first few hours when I know I'm going to be the most productive, you will inevitably scale a lot faster, because those productive hours are absolutely key for progress in any business and in any task in life. And things which people put to the side as okay here and there and are no problem at all if in moderation. I am not keen on believing that anymore. I used to be like, okay, hanging around some bad people are okay, and binging some food is okay at certain points of time. But when you look at a longer time horizon and you're looking at who else is in the space, who's competing with you, and who else is on your same level, and who else is on the same path as you, you will get outcompeted every single time by people who don't have these distractions and who don't have a consistent need to go back to these things again and again and again. Things like bad people. Now, someone who is going to either blur the vision in front of you or at least pull you away from something that is productive in your business will inevitably kill the growth of your business, because that one person is going to be okay as the lowest standard for the second person and the third person and the fourth person, because as long as someone is slightly better than that person, then they are okay to be around. I don't see that as something that's productive for the business or overall growth, not just because of the time or energy it costs you in that hour, but things like alcohol, for example, right? That's not just a night out. It's almost always the day after, and it's almost always a need to go back to that on the next weekend because it feels good. And of course, there's always going to be times where it's easy to go back to those things because it's been okay and you've been out of it fine in the past, but there's always going to be one time where it costs you more than just that night out or the day after and a few days after. Now, I'll tell you a story, like even with binging, for example, the food side of things is okay to justify here and there, but in the long run, you have to look at it as productivity in the short term as well as the long term. So the short term is always going to be you filling your stomach up to a certain amount of time, which inevitably does affect your cognitive performance. Huberman's done a bunch of studies on this as well, but it brings you back to a point of you can get positive affirmation, you can get that dopamine spike internally from having something that's super sweet consistently, and that becomes your reward stimulus versus accomplishing something that's productive in the business. Now, the next thing, $10 an hour tasks. These things, I see people doing multi six figures, high six figures, 7 figures a year, and are still doing some of these things like spreadsheet input, fixing tech issues, posting content, trimming and editing videos. You just shouldn't be doing this. I simply won't do stuff like cleaning groceries, driving, or cooking. If it costs me 15 minutes to drive somewhere, it may also cost me 5 minutes to park somewhere, and across a longer period of time, 15 minutes, 30 minutes to get back somewhere, that's just a few hours a week I could just pay someone else to do better, because that would be a 200-300x on my time. And the next thing is the small things in the business, posting stuff. I used to post every single thing and distribute across all platforms. It's number one, not just hurting your time cost, it's also hurting the business itself, because there's always a gap between you needing to post, you pressing that post button, and then you telling yourself that you don't have time, or the time which you're meant to post is gone and now it has to be the next day. It's just removing that decision process, because the problem with $10 an hour tasks is even if it doesn't take up time, it takes up energy, and energy, mental bandwidth, you will limit yourself in terms of decision fatigue with even stuff like choosing what clothes to wear. I wear pretty much same clothes all the time, every time, unless the missus picks it out for me and then I don't have to. So with these things, just try and cut down all the little things that will stack up and eventually become a big thing, because spreadsheet input, you may like some of these things like making PDFs, client admin, all of this stuff. It just feels productive, but it's death by a thousand cuts. None of these things are going to be a single thing that destroy your business, but over time it 100% will. Now, $100 an hour tasks, pretty much everyone doing multi six figures, high six figures, there's a lot of things which you can't or shouldn't be doing, but it is a high return on time, so it feels productive. So stuff like coaching calls, appointment setting, this should technically be here, because technically if you're getting, let's say, 20 calls booked in, and then out of 20, 15 show up, and out of 15, let's say 8 close on an average of $1,500. So that's almost, more than $10,000 from 20 calls booked in. Now, the 20 calls booked in may take 100, 200 messages or 300 messages, whatever it is, depending on the conversion. That 300 messages sent, yes, that means it's worth $10,000, but I didn't put it in the $1,000 hour task because there is a slightly longer process with the sales call also taking up the next hour and the next hour. So things like this you need to do, and there is leverage in certain points of the business, but the faster you get rid of these things, like coaching calls, the web design, the long form editing, copywriting, the faster you get rid of almost all of these things, the faster your business will grow, because it's costing you potential to be doing bigger tasks, like $1,000 an hour tasks. So things like creating content, filming ads, for example, these are things that people somehow know that they need to do, but will never get round to doing for one reason or another. Filming one piece of content is one to many, for example. So if you make 10 pieces of content in an hour, across 6 hours, you make 60 pieces of content, and across 60 pieces of content, one of them takes off, and it will generate you more than $1,000 an hour. And even things like creating ads or even running ads in the first place. These are things where you have infinite leverage if done right. And if you are going to iterate and adjust and review metrics, KPIs around these things, it's almost inevitable that these are $1,000 an hour tasks, but it's always seen as not as essential as, for example, taking a sales call. Now, taking a sales call, of course, you take sales calls, you close calls, and you know that you should be doing that. Once again, this is actually one of the last things that you should get rid of, because let's say you sell a $3,000 thing and you close very, very conservatively with a bad close rate, 1 in 3. That's $1,000 an hour. Now, doing the sales calls, I really don't think anyone should really get out of before $70,000, $80,000, $100,000 a month anyways, because everything else can be adjusted to optimize for more quality calls, better show rate, so you can consistently close calls. Yes, you may need a closer if it's a time zone thing, but these are one of those things where I'd be super, super careful around getting rid of early. And it's one of those things where people honestly just jump the gun. But once again, it has to be done well if done. Adding tasks to your calendar, maybe this takes you 15 minutes a day, but the leverage it gives you just knowing what to do next and the thing actually getting done because it's in your calendar can very much be $1,000 an hour thing. And for me, that was making sure that I had 1 week ahead where every single priority was slotted in. So at least if I wasn't going to fully complete something, I knew what to change the next day and the next day and the next day. So that task didn't get forgotten and I was at least accountable to it in that calendar slot. So next thing, sleeping, strategy meetings. Yes, sleeping does affect your productivity and it may be the difference between a task being done and not, which means that sleeping can very much be an $1,000 an hour thing. Strategy meetings. We have lots of strategy meetings, maybe too many, but making sure that you and your team are in alignment, have the right direction to move forward, may be the thing that gets you infinite leverage from someone else, because another member of your team, maybe they might be very skilled, they might be very, very competent, or they might not be, but if they have at least direction to learn, so they're as accountable as they could be to what at least you think they should be doing, it's a lot better than having essentially filled seats and assuming a job is being done. Now, the next thing, delegating easy stuff. So the things that we talked about in $10 an hour tasks, $100 an hour tasks, this may be an SOP that needs to be made, and maybe this takes you a few hours, but the time it buys you back, if your time is worth a significant amount more than all of this, then it could be $1,000 in that hour. And of course, making the hire, it might take you an hour to even post stuff on job posts. It might take you another hour to take the interviews, filter those tasks, and it may take you an hour to SOP out someone else doing this as well, but it just needs to be done. And then of course, training your nutrition, keeping yourself productive and reviewing your finances. So just the visibility around finances, looking at the sheets and then reviewing, discussing, see where costs need to be cut, see where you may have significant amount more capital than you think you need for you to invest back in the business to scale. Just reviewing it may give you the confidence that you need to allocate that where it needs to be placed. Now, $10,000 an hour tasks, in my opinion, brain health optimization, training and nutrition, I put in both because once again, it's a very, very productive task because basically being productive is super, super important. Now, improving the product, hiring key members. Your product is the only thing that is going to decide whether you build negative word of mouth, whether you build a sustainable business or not. So we endlessly improve our product. We review, renew our SOPs internally, as well as, of course, update a product as often as we possibly can. Hypergrowth, we took a year to build. I spent, I don't know how many hours doing that, but now we've got a stupidly high success rate and we are able to market that efficiently. And yes, we spent a whole year and I spent a stupid amount of hours building the back end and building the team as well. Like one team member who is highly skilled, qualified entrepreneur, for me to be able to bring someone on that team is a $10,000 an hour task, even if it is meaning that I had to just find the right people, to speak to the right people, to get a referral for the right team member to come in. These are things that I would also say that you just don't get rid of. Like, it's not one of those things that you want to even think of getting rid of until you get to a point where it doesn't make sense. But honestly, I even multi 7 figures, 8 figures, I don't think this is something that you get rid of. Now, firing, key SOP building, firing people who are dead weight in the business will drag down the entire team. The team are only going to be as efficient and as productive as your slowest team member. So you set the standards by deciding who to keep in and who to kick out, because especially when you're bringing new people in, if they come in and see people who are dead weight, who are slow, everything around what you say is culture, around you being a productive team, a hardworking team, means nothing anymore, because you lose consistency with your words. And if you lose consistency with your words, you lose respect, and all the tasks that you're giving people to be doing are no longer going to be done, because once again, you've lost respect within your own team. And building those key SOPs for, of course, the team members to take over, very, very important, because if you're unable to consistently update and improve SOPs as well, once again, you are running an outdated business where the team members don't even have a clear direction or strategy as to what they should be doing. Hosting events and borrowing audiences. So hosting events, you may speak to 50 people, an internal team event where that could be $10,000 that you make in that single hour, but more importantly, it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars if the retention is improved, if the brand is improved, the content that comes out of it could also generate you more. So another big thing that you can look at, and borrowing audiences, for example, speaking to influencers who may have your niche, your ideal clients in there. One person may be a difference between your entire business blowing up and not. Now, fixing bottlenecks. So one problem that is repeating again and again, that being fixed, and that may be taking a few hours, can make you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Because now, if let's say your show up rate goes from 30% to 65% and your show up was a bigger problem, down the line, that is a consistent problem that is going to be there if not fixed. So the longer that you take to execute on that task to fixing that one bottleneck, the faster your business will grow and the more potential it has to grow. Next, $100,000 an hour tasks. These are all kind of bundled into one, to be honest, but the bigger things that are going to completely change the course of your business are around here. So finding long-term partners, hiring high-level talent, building cash-generating systems. So one partner can be the difference between you tripling your business in a year versus 5 years. Yes, you can do everything yourself, and yes, you can get to a certain point with the right team members. Once again, one person, and building the cash generating systems like a new acquisition channel, for example, when it makes sense. I'm not saying this is something that should be a shiny object, but one system like an outbound appointment setting team, which is going to consistently generate you 5 more calls per day, is of course going to lead you to hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions in more sales. And that may be a decision which takes an hour to make, and maybe a task that also takes just a couple of hours to build and implement and execute on, if done right. Once again, integrating KPIs and culture. So this is like the wish-washy stuff that people love to skip over, but don't realize how important it is. So integrating KPIs means also keeping your team accountable to them and having systems to keep them accountable. So we always want one number to be attached to every single team member. If they're able to stick to that one number, like let's say one setter's KPI is 4. They have to book 4 calls a day, and that's what they're held accountable to. Integrating that into their day-to-day, and of course making sure your culture is aligned to be hitting KPIs. It's one of those things that people don't realize how important it is until they inevitably need to micromanage their team constantly, because they assume that just because they are paying someone, the task should be done. Now, there's a big difference between discretionary effort and just tasks being given to someone and expected to be done because there are KPIs. Discretionary effort is going to be pulled out by how, number one, you treat your team, of course. Do they even like you, number one? Are they well rewarded for it? Are there good incentive structures for them to execute on the task? And have you actually communicated what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, when it needs to be done by, the deadlines, and removed any bottlenecks from them doing that task? If so, then at that point, the KPIs are going to be easily executed on, and then the culture integrated within that. So how much are they wanting to work compared to everyone else in the team as well? And how much are they wanting to work based on your expectations? All important stuff. Now, the next thing, learning from successful people. So for me, like if I meet one person that tells me one thing and it takes me 10 hours even, that could be $1 million task that is done. That could be the next $1 million made by implementing, let's say, one ad strategy that is going to completely blow up my business. So I'm never against networking, and I'm never against a idea of meeting someone for the sake of just listening and not talking. I don't feel the need to prove myself if I go to meet someone and flex any credibility or whatever it is. It's always unproductive when you start talking more than the other person. And then, of course, I don't think this is something that nearly everyone needs to do. I think networking is also something that is overhyped in a lot of spaces, but is valuable at certain points. The biggest thing that changed the course of my life/business overall was tracking my time. Tracked every minute of my day for the past 4 or 5 years since my first mentor told me to. And it's honestly just like being able to see the numbers in your bank account or Stripe account. It's visibility. So visibility and accountability over the thing that we're talking about, how much money you make for the number of hours you work, the leverage that you gain, is the most valuable thing I think anyone can possibly have, in my opinion. Now, the $1 million an hour task. So these are the things that absolutely change the course of your entire life/business overall and can give you exponential leverage. For me, I can only talk about me, and I'm not saying it because I have a thing. It was hiring a mentor. So these are the usually very, very scary but very pivotal decisions that can absolutely skyrocket your business. For me, I wouldn't have had a business that continuously scaled if I didn't continue investing in my learning. And these were also things where I was like, okay, I'm going to spend a good year making sure I have the best products in the world. And I truly believe we do. I do think we have the best thing in the world because I've seen every single pitfall, gap in every single other mentorship, every single other online learning thing I've seen. So improving on that and working on that consistently was probably one of the best decisions I made because I know I can outlast the entire market. Now, a little thing at the end for us to go through. What did my fitness business look like from 0 to 10, 10 to 30, 30 to 50, 50 to 100K a month in terms of who I hired and what they actually did? So 0 to 10K a month was just me. It was just executing on stuff I already knew I should be doing and having the right information to do so. 10 to 30K a month, I had one person in fulfillment, one setter who was generating calls through DMs, one outbound VA, who was starting the first message. So starting the conversations for that setter. I was still in lead generation still, and I hired my first mentor around then as well. Next thing was the 30 to 50K a month. So I had 3 coaches at that point, 2 setters, an editor, so I wasn't doing any editing. I spent too long doing that at the beginning. Finance admin, so I wasn't inputting stuff into sheets and all of this shit, which I spent way too long just obsessing over Stripe over. And 50 to 100K a month, 4 coaches, I had 4 setters and the outbound VA. I had 1 closer at this point as well, around 60, 70 a month, and I had all the other stuff that was under here. And then 100K a month and above, it looked like this. So it was me, the people in the blue had direct access to me. So I had a social media manager, ops manager, financial controller, everything went through the ops manager, just absorbed everything, which they just absorbed everything before it came to me. I had 4 setters, someone who managed those setters as well. And then the coaches had a manager, had another closer, editor. Organic media buyer was page shout out pages, client pages, content distribution specialist. So that was fancy word for someone posting. I brought that in a bit earlier there as well. Financial controller. So that was just someone where all the finances came through and all the direct reports came to me. And I didn't have to do much except just look at Slack and then look at some WhatsApp messages and it's barely working at that point, which is when I actually start building Hypergrowth, our one-to-one mentorship. So thank you very much for watching. Hope that helps. See you soon.